Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at the Metawatch. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. So late but not forgotten, Games Workshop finally dropped the Age of Sigmar Metawatch, and I've had a look through it. I watched a couple of other people's in-depth reviews, and I gotta say, overall, it looks pretty good. So if you want a full-on in-depth look, check out Rob, the Honest Wargamer. He always does a great breakdown. But in the meantime, we'll just take a look at the article. Warhammer Age of Sigmar Metawatch, big changes abound in the new Battlescroll. Armies have been battling over the blighted tundras of Andor for a while, and veterans of these spell-packed battlefields are slowly but surely unpicking the tactics and stratagems that make up the current state of play in the General's Handbook Pitch Battle 2023-2024. To ensure the future of match play is challenging, balanced, and ever compelling, the Warhammer Studio has today unfurled the second Battlescroll of the season. Here's Matt from the studio and video that goes into most of the juicy changes in detail. So I did check out this video as well, and they do talk about quite a few changes. There's also some mistakes in the video. They misspoke about a couple things, but we're going to skip that and take a look at the full article. Get straight to business by downloading the Battlescroll below and check out the FAQs and download page to see whether your faction has received any additional errata. So it did look like they balanced out some of the stronger armies. It didn't look like they completely nerfed anybody. So if you've been doing well before, you probably took a couple of small hits, but it didn't look like you're going to have to shelf your army or anything like that. Unfortunately, a couple of the armies that have not been doing so hot might not have gotten enough love to make a difference. But we got the link down in the description if you want to jump straight to the Battlescroll. It is about 7 pages, and they did go through and highlight the changes in magenta. Months of chasing down the puissant spellcasters of the mortal realms has hardened the wizard finders of Andor, whose magic hunter's ability now shields them from the effects of spells and endless spells that target them on a 5-up. The new battle tactic, Drain Their Power, meanwhile gives armies that have eschewed the arcane arts an extra way of scoring, providing that a hero with the Nullstone adornment can contest an objective controlled by their opponent. So obviously GW has buffed up magic quite a bit. So it is nice that they have put in this 5-up to essentially help the magic hunters shut down some of the magic, and then also having a new battle tactic that could be achieved fairly easy in the right circumstances. Also really nice for those anti-magic players. Melee mastery is still the order of the day in Age of Sigmar, and various units have seen their melee range increase to 2 inches, so they can better fight in 2 ranks. Gors, Zangors, Vanquishers, Volkite Berserkers, Bladegeist Revenants, Dreadscythe Harridans, and Glaive Wraith Stalkers all benefit. So essentially just allowing you to get more of those models in combat, as some of the restrictions in Sigmar are bigger units don't get to fight with all their guys. Alongside the usual expected changes, there's a number of tweaks to the faction-specific battle tactics. Flee for Skaven, the Grasping Dead for Soulblight Gravelords, Sneak Up, and That's Our Tooth Now. For Orc war clans have all received minor changes. Salon Starmasters of the Starborn variety have seen a thaumaturgical tide turn. A Lord of Celestial Renounce now only grants 2 cosmic power points for the first cast, or unbind they perform each phase. Kroxigor pick up the slack by gaining an extra wound. So trying to do like a little bit of internal balance on the actual Salon, which makes sense, as the Starborn are pretty freaking strong, and they want to essentially kind of take a little away from them without necessarily completely nerfing the faction. But we did see some big points changes for the Salon as well. For Cities of Sigmar, the Alchemite Warforger's Blazing Weapon spell has cooled down and now only affects melee units, while the Null Myriad subfaction of the Osiarch Bone Reapers find their magical defenses crackling slightly as their ability ignores spell falls to a 4+. So Osiarch Bone Reapers now ignoring those spells on a 4+. And then the Blazing Weapons from the Alchemite Warforgers, definitely taking a big nerf here, as now you're going to have still that useful mortal wound ability on melee weapons in that little bubble area. But we did see some big changes in points previously to some of the ranged weapons, and part of that was predicated on the fact that they could do those mortal wounds. So now some of those units are going to definitely struggle. And it does look like you're going to see more of the cavalry list doing well and the combat list doing well, and just a lot less of a threat from those heavy shooting lists. The terrifying bloodthirsty shivers of the Futhian enclave of the Idneth Deepkin now only automatically wound on hit rolls of 6, making their Achillean Alopexes slightly less terrifying. So you used to have the exploding 6s, now those 6s just going to auto wound. So not necessarily a big nerf, just a little bit different. It's going to change the maximum damage output, but it's going to make them a little more consistent. The Eidolon of the Manthlin in the aspects of the sea improves to Tsunami of Terror spell, which now reaches further and is guaranteed to hit 3 units. Incentivizing your melee armies. Like charging, all 3 varieties of Maulgruntas now only lose points from unstoppable momentum at the end of the battle round, keeping their Porcine Wrecking Balls up to speed. So it should help them keep their momentum going, which is cool because once you power your unit up, you want to be able to keep them powered up and keep kicking butt. Makes it a little more in your control and a little less up to your opponent. Demonic Princes have received a sizable increase in the attack output, and that's not all for Chaos. Khorne has had just about enough of Wizards, and Hatred of Sorcery now extends to friendly spells. Still scope for some spellcasting shenanigans, but it's now far less reliable. So Demon Princes got a buff for melee, and then Khorne, the idea is that you can't have Wizards because Khorne hates it. But the way the rules are set up, you can obviously ally in Wizards. We see a lot of Be'lakor in those Blades of Khorne armies. So now the Hatred of Sorcery is just going to shut down all spells, including your own, on a 5-up, which means that essentially those Wizards are going to become 33% less effective. So you can still take them, but they're going to be nerfed a little bit, which makes sense. After some recitals, the Sloppity Bilepiper has changed his My Love is like a ripe fart ability, which now only affects his rolls rather than pile-ins, to prevent some unwanted negative play. So we've seen these issues in the past in 40k and then also in Sigmar, where you're basically able to fight and then use some shenanigans where your opponent can't fight you back. So they just got rid of that. So no more of those feel-bad moments from the Sloppity Bilepiper. There's a handful of other changes to be found, and as ever, the document is capped off with substantial points changes both up and down, most factions aiming to tweak internal balance, incentivize new builds, and balance the playing field further. So we got the download link in the description, and there is a note at the bottom. An earlier version of this article alleged that Blue and Brimstone Horrors would become battle line for Disciples of Tzeentch. This was an error. They've had their points lowered, but they didn't become battle line in the end. The Changer of Ways is as tricksy as ever. So that's always a bummer because they were obviously on the edge of making that change and at the last minute pulled it back. So sorry to you Tzeentch followers. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. So if we just jump over here to the Battlescroll, we'll see the Nullstone Cache, February 2024, and there's a little bit about like some of the rules that were talked about in there. Again, we see the changes in magenta. It's 7 total pages. Most of the various armies didn't get a change, or they did if it's like 1 or 2 sentences, maybe a paragraph at best. So it shouldn't be too crazy to keep up with. Just scrolling down through here, obviously we see like a few pages of that. And then at the bottom, we've got those points changes. So here, essentially, all they've done is highlighted the actual changes. You can go through the actual points list and see the full updated points. That document has been updated as well. But here specifically, you can just jump on and check out, for instance, Fire Slayers and just see all of the things that got points reductions. Reductions in green because it's a good thing, and point hikes in red because it's a bad thing. And we see that basically it's like 2 pages of that. So have a look down here. Essentially, you can see, did your army get stronger or weaker just by seeing the color of it? So essentially, if everything's green, your army probably got a little stronger. You're going to be able to take a little bit more. If it got red, it means your army got nerfed. So in this case, the Karajan Overlords, predominantly in red. And then we see like a couple of key units in Gloomspite Gitz, some of the cities of Sigmar, and then a little bit more internal balance from the Seraphon. But overall, the most important thing to pay attention to is if you got a character and the character went up or down in points, you're only going to have one of them in your army. As where if you have one of your units that you were taking multiples of or like reinforcing multiple times, any points changes you see there is going to affect like 5 or 6 units. So it's much more important. But it sounded like overall these changes were received quite well. It does look like they have not done anything too drastic, but we should see the actual balance of the game come into effect. We should see some changes in internal balance and people having to tweak their lists. But again, like I said, I don't think anybody's going to be pulling anything off the shelf necessarily or putting anything back on. We did see some of like the bigger pieces get some points reductions. But the majority of the time with those large centerpiece models, you're either building your army around them or you're not using them at all. So let me know if you've gone through here, if you've taken a look at some of the other reviews, what you think of the overall points and rules changes. Always like to hear back from you guys in the comments. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. Check out the link in the description to save 15% on Games Workshop products. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and overall, it looks like Games Workshop did a pretty good job. And I'm out of here.